All right, shooting guards. Kevin Herter, the starting two on this team. I gave him a B plus. I was so close to giving an A minus. And I don't think I would get a lot of pushback on the fact that he'd get a B plus just on that standing alone. Do you think that that's off? I mean, considering the fact that he has shown some wear down with higher usage and a bigger role, but he's undeniably been good. And at the same time, he's shown a lot of improvement in defense, but has also shown kind of some areas that still need improvement.
Yeah, I could even say Herter more of a B than a B
Hmm.
plus, just considering that he's declined like in his 3 point percentage. And I just want to preface this with like this dude came in to shoot threes, and he started off hot. He's so very hot, and then he is what you said shooting like in the 20%
Like,
this
yeah, like
month.
29% through 8 games.
Yeah, and it's just like the inconsistency brings it down for me.
Yeah,
And
he's
yeah,
a
he's
big
playing
one.
decent defense, but still hasn't been like incredible. I mean, I could see a B plus as well. I don't think an A minus. I don't think he's that high, just because he's just that three ball has just fallen off so hard. And yeah, he does other things well still, but at the same time, you need this dude to hit threes, and he's still shooting 39%. That's what you kind of expected. So it's just like a B. He hasn't like I think he's doing exactly what we thought he would do this year,
Yeah,
regardless of his inconsistencies. Like if you look at his stats, I'm like, okay, like so I was kind of assuming that's what Herter would be doing this year. He's kind of just like getting by, and I think that's a B student in my opinion.
yeah, I think that that's actually a pretty fair assessment. I think, like, offensively, I think you're totally right about the three ball when you think about how important 3 point shooting in terms of surrounding Sabonis and Fox with 3 point shooting, how important that was. It was obviously a priority of the offseason by getting Herder, Monk, and can't forget Murray in the draft. So I think that holds a lot of weight. I think that's a good point. And then it's just like the one thing that does kind of like I was really when he was coming into the Kings, I was like, man, this guy. When you watch some of the stuff he does defensively in Atlanta, it's like he kind of gets caught flat-footed, caught using his hands and a lot of stuff like that. And that's still more or less the same. Like he'll get in foul trouble. He gets beat by guys when forced into one-on-one situations. But off ball, he's been like a model citizen. He's been terrific. Just constant progression in terms of getting interceptions from the weak side, coming from that side to help, things like that. He's a very smart player. It's kind of just physically limited in some ways, and that was kind of the reason I gave him a B plus because you add all that together on the defensive end. Maybe that's not really exceeding my expectations, but the one element that kind of gives it the B plus for me, although I really do not have any issue giving him a B, but the one thing is it's like he's shown that he can still put up 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 points a game and go 1 of 6 from three. He doesn't need to rely on that outside jump shot. The chemistry that he's formed with Sabonis, I think that two-man game, I think that's the most frequently used two-man game on the team, more than Fox and more than Monk and more than anybody else. I think Murray would probably be next. I just think that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of interesting. But
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I like what you said for giving him a B. And if we're gonna give
Okay.
Davion Mitchell a C, then I think we should. I think maybe I was a little bullish on her. I was afraid that I was too hard on Herter. My
No,
mom read my grades and she said, "I think you're being too hard on Kevin Herter."
she's a big Herter fan.
She is. Herter B, solid, very good.
I like that.
Malik Monk, off the bat, I gave him a B. I thought about giving him a B minus, honestly, but still kind of feel like even when he was going through his slump, and this was my factoring into it. Even when he was going through his slump, which was like him averaging like 10 points a game on really bad percentages, it's not like his facilitating dropped off. He was still averaging about 4 assists a game. And I think to some degree, the fact that he's the one guy on the bench that he's not going to win six man of the year. He's not even in the top 5. He's barely in the top 10, but he's in the top 10. That says something. And I think what he did at the beginning of the season, in terms of, I think he had such a huge role in when the Kings really got rolling early on, in terms of what he was able to do as kind of a primary facilitator. He was averaging close to 5 assists at the beginning of the season, actually. because of what he was doing when Sabonis would go off the floor. And maybe I don't factor that kind of stuff in fairly to everybody. I'm not saying that I'm grading everybody perfectly here, but I have a hard time not giving Monk a B. You know, kind of in that same sense that thinking about the expectations too. You always say that Malik Monk is streaky, but it's like he's always been. That's just Malik Monk. So in a
Mm-hmm.
way, I feel like just based off of that, I think that's the reason I would go with B. What would you go with for Malik Monk?
No, I agree with the B. It is the inconsistency. I mean, there have been stretches, just like everyone, but where he's played like, man, a guy, um, six man of the year candidate for real. But then then goes on that slump, and he's like, oh man, like this is bad. And so it is the inconsistencies that bring him to B. Sometimes he plays like an A, and then some stretches he plays like an F or a D. And so, I mean, for those reasons alone, that's just a B guy. Where Herder's kind of like, yeah, he's putting up like those normal stats for a B guy. It's like Monk is more on the sense where it's like, man, he's like an A student one month, but like it's just a D student the next. And so, kind of like Herder, you kind of have to meet him in the middle a little. So I can see you going down to a B minus, but I think he's played more good basketball than bad. He's had more of those A months than like the D months, and then of course he's had like B months. Now I'm just like really going into these grades, but um, I think he's a B for sure because he's still an important player. He's doing well on the team. But like you kind of wish you could have given him A minus. So he has kind of, I guess, he's underperformed, but it's still not a bad grade. So I
No, not at
agree with
all.
a B for the Monk.
It's just it comes down to the fact that it's like not at all surprising that he's inconsistent. I would say like the biggest thing for Monk, or the biggest thing that you could maybe complain about. Maybe I didn't make a big enough deal about this, but what is he shooting from three this season? He's shooting like 32% from three.
Yeah, considering he
Like
came off like
that's
last year shooting 39.
yeah, and it's like I mean, aside from his free throw percentage, all his shooting percentages are down. But I don't know. I think that might have something to do with the fact that he's taken on a new kind of facilitating role. I don't know how much all that factors in. But that same thing that we said about Herder. He picked up three guys in the offseason to bolster the shooting. And Herder, like we talk about him being inconsistent and stuff like that, he's still shooting a pretty good percentage. Keegan Murray is awesome. He's arguably the best. He's on his way to being one of the best 3-point shooters as a rookie ever. And then you have Malik Monk, who's just like he never really had it going. I think he's had stretches of like 8 to 10 games where he's shooting like 40%. I think the right before he hurt his ankle, the previous 8 games, he's been shooting like about 40%. But at the beginning of the year, he was like shooting 35, and everybody was like, "Well, that's going to go up," and it really only went down. So
Yeah.
I think that factors in massively. But then at the same time, it's like I never would have saw that he would have been the passer that he is for this team. And that's
Yeah.
remained pretty consistent. I mean, like, yeah, it was closer to 5 at the beginning of the year, but it's remained about 3.9 assists a game, about 4. And also, he's been way better than I thought he would be on defense. So in a lot of ways, it's just like I feel like he falls right into that B realm. Just B.
I think so too. I think so too. So two Bs. I mean, pretty good. I mean, this was one of the higher,
Yeah.
rated groupings, position grouping when at the beginning of the season. So and then to cap it off with the
Oh,
other
yeah.
shooting guard, we got Terrence Davis, and I mean, I almost want to give this guy like a B plus just for his readiness in his sporadic minutes. He's been really good as that third string point guard, and like I said, a guy who can probably be a second string point guard on most teams. I'm saying point guard, I mean shooting guard. And so I think in that sense, just his overall readiness. He's usually playing with hustle, playing his heart out every time he sees the floor in these spotty minutes he's getting, and that's something you can really admire because he should be getting more minutes, but we just have two really good shooting guards above him, and so in that sense, it's hard to give him a B plus. Kind of like the Dellavedova, I want to give him an A minus for that reason. I mean, Terrence Davis has had bad games. His defense hasn't been the best, but or at times it hasn't been the best. But I think just overall, I think he deserves a B, just like his counterparts at that shooting guard position. What do you think?
I think you had it spot on at first. I think he definitely deserves a B plus. I don't think
Okay.
there's any doubt. We came into this season saying like this guy has a chance to really kind of like force his way into being a factor on this team. And in a lot of ways, he's done all he can. Aside from the fact that he's had spotty minutes and whatnot, he comes in, and once that rhythm comes back, sometimes he's the scariest scorer on the floor at times. You
Yeah, I
know,
mean, like the Nets game.
yeah, I mean, like, he's capable of that at any point. His value as a spot starter has been incredible, and to the point about defense, Terrence Davis statistically, I mean, I don't read too much into the defensive rating and stuff like that because if you do that, you start factoring in. You're like, well, then Chimezie Metu, because Chimezie Metu has an insanely good defensive rating, and the reason I would say that he probably has a great defensive rating, and there's probably other factors involved in this, but think about how much he plays with Davion Mitchell. Think about how much he plays with De'Aaron Fox, who on the defensive rating front isn't great, but ball pressure wise, he's been great. Monk has been a pretty good defender this year. And I think Terrence Davis is the third best applier of ball pressure on this team. He's definitely the most susceptible of Mitchell, Fox, and Davis. I think Davis is the most susceptible of the three to foul, which I think is one of his biggest knocks on defense. But from the moment in that game against Phoenix at home, where he had that like learning lesson that with Mike Brown, where he didn't step up, then he drew the charge. That's like a perfect microcosm for what he is on the defensive end. He's just constantly trying to be better. He's constantly trying to make a difference. And if he's not fouling people, which he kind of started to do in the second game against Phoenix right before the break, I think he had a couple of fouls there. I think all in the third quarter or something like that. That was about a week ago now, so I'm not 100% sure. But other than that, like, I guess what I'm saying is the biggest fault for him on defense is he's a little too zealous, like a little overzealous with his activity. But I think if you look at deflections per 36 minutes, he's easily in first place on the team. He's a terrific defender, in my opinion. And I always said, and you pointed it out too, this guy's got a 6'9" wingspan on a 6'4" frame. That's not incredible, but it's something. He's got some length. You add that frenetic activity that he just plays with on every end of the floor and has had to do as an undrafted free agent. I mean, and then given the fact that he's the third shooting guard, he's not offered as many opportunities in the rotation relative to the role. He's been awesome. And all I can think about, especially after Monk hurt his ankle, and granted that's not a super big injury, but it's just like, man, you're just really happy to have Terrence Davis if you're Mike Brown, because you lose Monk for a bit. I mean, obviously Monk's great, but well, you got Davis. It's not a big deal. It really takes the brunt of that hit off. And I think for all those reasons, Terrence Davis deserves a B plus. I mean, he's just been great. He's just a constantly running engine, and he's had to stay ready the most for any opportunity that he's had, even more than Trey Lyles, even more than Chimezie Metu. And he more or less does pretty well, especially if he's got a rhythm going. When he's thrown into something after not playing for a while, you kind of give him a little bit of a benefit of the doubt, but he'll figure it out a game or two later. He'll get that thing going. And he's one of the better he's better 3-point shooter this season than Monk. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I have nothing but good things to say about Terrence Davis.
It's hard not to.
So I would make the argument that he gets a B plus.
I'm very down for that B plus.
Well,
so we got 2 Bs, a B plus. I mean, I'm assuming it's going to be around like a 3-4. Oh no, probably around a 3-5, 3-6.
Oh no, 2 Bs and a B plus at the same credits, 5, 3, and 1. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Or should we give? Yeah, it's a 3.03, so it's a B minus average.
What? How?
That's that's a. Yeah, never mind. 3.0 is a B. That's a B average, but it is a 3.03 because anything between a 3.0 and a 3.3. So shooting guard B. Well, that's 2 Bs for the positional group.
It's 2 Bs. Makes sense. And I'm assuming that may be the highest score too. But
yeah, I don't think it's going to exceed that.
Yeah, it's I don't know.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
we'll find out in a sec.
We'll find out. I don't know.